So this is pretty interesting. There is a story out in Politico, and it says Progressive PAC kickstarts search for challengers to Manchin and Sinema. Now, as you guys know, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, they're both essentially really centrist or even Republican Democrats. They're basically dinos, Democrats in name only. Kyrsten Sinema is from Arizona. Joe Manchin is from West Virginia. Now, it explains a trio of progressives who helped launch AOC's 2018 upset campaign are now setting their sights on Senate Democrats. The co-founders of No Excuses PAC, Saikat Chakrabarti, Corbin, Trent, and Zack, Exley, are starting a search for candidates to challenge incumbent Democrats they say are standing in the way of ambitious action to end the coronavirus pandemic and revive the economy. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin and Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who aren't up for re-election until 2024, are the first Democrats on their target list, the left-wing strategist shared first with Politico. Chakrabarti and Trent are also former aides to Ocasio-Cortez. Quote, only real way to pressure any of these folks and hold them accountable to their promises is to threaten their power and threaten the seat that they hold and threaten their re-election, said Chakrabarti, who is also a former chief of staff to AOC. We sort of have this theory that the voters in Arizona and the voters in West Virginia would care more about action. They care more about jobs in their community and money in their pockets than they do about an arcane Senate rule called the filibuster. In an email to supporters Tuesday, the PAC will say, help us find the next AOC to replace Manchin and Sinema. It urges its grassroots base to aid them to run ads telling Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema that they will be primaried and replaced in 2024 if they join with Republicans to shrink their own party's pandemic, climate, and economic plans. So, basically, they're trying to challenge Manchin and Sinema in the Senate. I actually think this is a really bad idea. The primaries have already been tried against Joe Manchin. It has not worked. Now, I think that there's roughly 0% chance that you defeat Joe Manchin in a primary with a progressive. And I know what you're going to say. Oh, well, Bernie Sanders won every county in the Democratic primary. Yeah, Bernie Sanders was running against Hillary Clinton. West Virginians and rural voters fucking hated Hillary Clinton. So Bernie Sanders was able to capitalize off that. Joe Manchin is elected, obviously West Virginians are voting him in. So he's not Hillary Clinton. That's just not the way they look at him. And so he's a much more difficult target to take out. And it's not the case that every single place is going to elect a progressive. It's just not possible. So I actually think this is a waste of resources. Now, Kyrsten Sinema, I don't know what the odds of a progressive in Arizona is to challenge Kyrsten Sinema. You also got to understand, winning Senate races are incredibly difficult, right? It's a statewide race. It's a lot more volatile. It's a lot more detailed. There's so many different areas you have to focus on with different strategies. You can't really take one strategy for the entire state because there's rich areas, there's poor areas, there's middle class areas, and you have to really account for all of that. And it's a very difficult thing. I think that challenging people who are incumbents, who are against Medicare for all and things of that nature, who are in blue areas, I think is actually where they should target it. Areas that are blue, that is actually has a real shot of getting rid of a corporate Democrat, similar to what we're seeing in these House races where there's these really blue areas, but somehow, like Joe Crowley, for example, right? Total corporate sellout, total centrist. And, he got taken out. That's not somebody in some red area like West Virginia. And that was a smart move. And so, progressives is resources are extremely limited and you have to be smart in what you're doing. I think this is a dumb idea. Now, you may be thinking, well, even if the primary year doesn't win, it's going to change, it's going to put pressure on them. I don't really see that happening. I think Manchin has a pretty big stronghold on West Virginia. I don't think he's really scared of a primary. Again, you have to remember, this is a Senate race, folks. This is not a House race. This is a lot more difficult to do. I don't buy that. And so I think this is, he's the swing vote right now. What we should be focusing on, instead of him being the swing vote and trying to replace him, which is a waste of time, we should try to figure out how to make it so he's not the swing vote anymore. And we need to have more Bernie Sanders and Ed Markey's in the Senate than we do. We really got 2-3 progressive senators We want more of those people. We want to take out corporate Democrats, replace them with progressives. That's what we want to do. So the goal should be, let's primary corporate Democrats and replace them with real progressives. That should be the strategy because it's more feasible, it's more doable, and it makes more sense. These are really incredibly difficult things. I think that trying to take West Virginia would definitely be a big mistake and a waste of resources. You don't want to do what happened with Mitch McConnell and, his challenger. Her name escapes me right now, but it was a complete disaster. The Democrats burnt like $100 million on it when they could have used it in so many better areas. I personally believe this would be a huge waste of time. If you're going to focus on senators, focus on people in blue areas who do not support Medicare for All, Green New Deal, free college, these kinds of things, to really push them, to support them. And then if you win, you pick up the seat, and wow, that's crazy. But this I actually think is a pretty big mistake because this experiment has been tried. It has not worked. West Virginians are not going to vote for some like progressive Democrat. It's just not going to happen. The electorate is different. They like Joe Manchin. That's why they keep voting him in. Kyrsten Sinema, same thing. I'm very personally very skeptical as to whether or not a primary challenger would be successful. But I guess I would give it more of a shot than Manchin. But this is an idea that some people think. But I personally believe it's a waste of resources.